Greetings, we hope all is well. This is the Walking by Faith podcast hosted by Minister Larry Montgomery, Sr. and friends. Genesis 1:1, KJV, states, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God." And 2 Corinthians 5:7, KJV, states, "For we walk by faith, not by sight." While Romans 10:17, KJV, says, "So then faith cometh by hearing, and hearing by the word of God." Which brings us to Hosea 4:6, KJV, that states, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." Welcome to another episode of the Walking by Faith podcast. I am your host, Minister Larry Montgomery, Sr. The sole purpose of this podcast is to present candid discussions about various words that are found in the Bible with an eye towards defining in the context of these troubled times, along with clarity, insight, commentary, and hopefully some revelation to interested listeners. This podcast is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group.tv and can be found on most podcast platforms. Video presentations are available on YouTube, the African American Shopping Network channel. This show is sponsored by www.theauthor'scorner.online. Please like us and follow us on Facebook.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Walking by Faith podcast. I'm your host, Elder Dr. Larry Montgomery Sr., and this week's topic is really part one of three. We're going to focus in on the bloodline. We're probably going to need more episodes than I have planned, but it just depends on how deep you want to go. This podcast is not a preaching podcast. It's a teaching podcast. And the purpose is to go through the Bible and talk about some of the words, phrases, situations, and try to get some additional insight for those of us who may think we understand, but aren't really sure, and for those of us who would just like to know a little more about it. I mean, God put us here, and He put us here for a reason. And a part of our job is to get a full understanding of God and what He wants and how He wants it, so that when it's our time that we have the opportunity to join Him, that we have studied to show ourselves approved. So let me get into this, because this is going to be kind of challenging, although it's very interesting because it has so many, I'm not saying it's like an octopus, but it has so many different tentacles to go in so many different directions to get that meat that we need to get an understanding. So let me first run my clip. I think it's right. This is interesting. Let me try this one.
Hey there, scholars. Today I'm diving into a fascinating journey. We're tracing the genealogy from Adam to Noah. This is part one of our three-part series, The Bloodline. Let's start right at the beginning with Adam. Known as the Son of God and the first human being, Adam's significance in biblical history cannot be overstated. After Adam, we move on to his third son, Seth. Seth is often considered the ancestor of the chosen lineage, the one through whom God's promise would be realized. Next, we have Enos. Enos stands out because in his time, people began to call upon the name of the Lord, marking a shift towards a more organized worship of God. Enos' son, Canaan, comes next in line. Canaan's period is less documented, but he remains crucial in the sacred lineage. Following Canaan, we meet Mahalaleel. His name means praise of God, reflecting the deepening relationship between God and humanity during his time. Mahalalel's son Jared is next, Kirtul. Jared's era was pivotal as it set the stage for the arrival of one of the most significant figures, Enoch. Enoch, the seventh in this genealogy, has a unique place in history. Not only did he live a life of faith, but Enoch also walked with God and was taken up to heaven, bypassing death. Enoch's son Methuselah is notable too, especially for his extraordinary lifespan of 969 years, making him the longest-lived human recorded in the Bible. Methuselah's son, Lamech, is next. Lamech plays a crucial role as the father of Noah, a pivotal figure in biblical history. Noah, the 10th in this genealogy, is renowned for his righteousness and for building the ark that preserved humanity and animal life during the Great Flood. Finally, we arrive at Shem, Noah's son. So Shem's significance lies in his descendants, who would go on to form the nations that play critical roles in biblical narratives. This lineage from Adam to Noah is more than just a list of names. It's a profound testament to the unfolding of God's plan over generations. Each person in this genealogy contributed to the divine story that would culminate in the coming of Jesus Christ. Stay tuned for part 2, where we continue this journey from Noah to Abraham. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of our sacred history. Make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next installment of the Bloodline. Until next time, keep the faith and keep exploring.
Well, that's going to get us started here. I'm just going to kind of go out on a limb and just assume that we all are familiar with the story of Adam. Adam being the first created man by God. And not to really go into that whole situation there, and when God created man and blew the breath of life into him, he created him from the dust. We'll talk about that at some point. And so after God created Adam and all of the animals and fish and birds and all that kind of stuff, it was just kind of like an epiphany. Right then, God's like, it's not good for man to be alone. So Adam, what do you think? Let's go over all of these things that I've created, and you name them. He named them. And then at the end, after naming all of the animals and birds and creepy crawly things, Adam realized that there was none there for him. There was no one there for him. And so God put him to sleep, took a rib, I assume used some dust, and created woman. And the two dwelled together for a period of time. And somewhere along that time, God had explained to Adam that everything here is available to you, which is great. Tend the garden, and I'll see you in a little bit. And so, but he did point out the tree of good and evil, don't touch it. Don't eat nothing from it. Don't touch it. And I guess since that tree was pretty much in the middle of the garden, at some point, Eve, while she was chatting with the serpent, was convinced that what God said don't do, in her conversation with the serpent, to go on and do it anyway. And after she grabbed a whole little fruit and looked at it, she wanted to offer it up to Adam, who seemingly was standing right there. Now, me personally, I'm not the kind of person to be standing with my wife and she's having a conversation with a serpent. Not feeling that. But anyway, then she grabs a hold to the fruit that God told Adam to his face, don't touch it, don't eat it. And she gave it to him, and he ate too. So yeah, there was I don't know where the disconnect was there, but anyway, the long and short of it, God was upset with that after what happened, and he, for lack of a better word, cursed them. All three, Adam, Eve, and the serpent. Now, there's a lot more to the story, but I'm not going to go into that right now. We'll just move on here. Then, after that situation, when God had cursed Adam and Eve, the relationship was broken between Adam, Eve, and God. And this was, I'm just going out on a limb here, we just was not, God was not pleased with that. He created man for a reason, and now because of man's disobedience, um, God just can't go along with that. I mean, we have free will, which is a whole nother conversation. Because had we not had free will, issue of eating or not eating that fruit would never have come to the table. So anyway, now we have God's curse on man as far as his sinful nature being something that is going to be carried on for all mankind. And the wages of sin is death. And so I, again, out on that limb, believe that God he's a merciful God. So he give you another chance. But because of the grievousness of that decision to be disobedient, forced God to do something that I guess I'm sure he wasn't accustomed to, but more so, hello, hey, how you doing?
Good evening, sir.
How are you?
I am doing great.
Good.
How are you doing?
Good, good. Just talking a little bit about the bloodline.
Yes, sir.
Since you're here, um, you have any thoughts on that?
The bloodline. Mm.
Well, let me
Going
get you
deep.
started. Let
We
me
go.
get you started. I
We
only
go.
want to talk about from Adam to Noah. I really want to focus in on Noah, so I'm not just going to kind of gloss over Adam and go on through.
Okay.
All right. So if you want to start there with Noah, go right ahead.
I'll listen in and then jump in. Where
Well, the reason why this conversation is focusing on Noah is because between Adam and Noah, there's not a lot of information in the Bible about the different, let's just say, parents, fathers, whatever, that had come along. Noah is interesting because at the time, Noah found himself in a situation whereas you were pretty much going to be the last person on earth
mm,
between you and your family, your immediate family, because God is going to just wipe everything out and we're going to start all over basically. Now, on the one hand, you might think that, well, Noah was chosen because he was the most upright man, which is fine. God had a reason for that.
yes.
However, Noah was joined with his three sons and their wives and his wife. Now, there's not a lot of conversation about the three sons, what their spiritual standing was with God. We just assume that because the three of them were raised by Noah, that they had knowledge of God and
Mm-hmm.
that they were, good, godly people. Let's just go with that. But when the flood was over and these four families were left to repopulate the world, we find that each son had a specific role in that.
Hmm.
And because of what happened early on in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve and their disobedience, God had decided that the Savior would come from that particular bloodline. Well, that was the only bloodline left when we wound up with Noah, okay, and his family. So, of the three, it doesn't say anything about Noah having any more children after those three young men, for whatever reason. Noah was old. He was already 500 years old when he got the word to build the ark.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guess maybe he wasn't, too spry at making any more kids, but his children were able to. So of those three, Shem, Ham, and I can't pronounce the last one,
Japet.
Japak.
Japet.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm never going to get it right, so I'm just going to go with it, the J man. Um, the one that stands out the most, which again continues the bloodline, is Shem, Shem.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is your opportunity to tell me what you know about that.
Well, it's been a while since I tapped into the genealogies. Although my memory right now to juggle back there, I can't even remember. I can't even remember Shem children, Ham children, Japhet's children. I don't remember.
Okay, all right. Shem's children included Cush and the Canaan.
Okay, the Cushites. Okay.
Okay, but before we get to him starting his bloodline, after the flood, and as we know, Noah was a farmer. Um, there was a situation which resulted in Shem being cursed.
Mm-hmm.
You remember that story?
Yes.
Okay. What do you remember?
That was when he went in and he saw his father nakedness. I think that's what I can remember when he went in and his other brother came in and they turned their back. Vaguely.
Okay. Let me help you out. I believe the way this story goes is that Noah had gotten drunk,
Mm-hmm.
supposedly, fell asleep, and he wasn't clothed.
Yes.
And Shem came in. It was either him or Shem's son.
Mm-hmm.
His son's name was Canaan, and came in and supposedly done something inappropriate at that time, and then went out and told the two other brothers that the father was in there naked or whatever.
Yes.
And then they came in and they weren't interested in doing whatever Canaan did or Shem did, whichever the one of the two
Mm-hmm.
did. And so they came in with their backs to the father
Yes.
and brought his robe, blanket, however, and covered him. And when Noah woke up and found out what had happened, he was upset with Shem.
Mm-hmm.
And so he cursed his children. So now, if it was Canaan, if it was him who was the one who went in the hut or whatever and did whatever he did, then the bloodline is still intact because Shem's the father, and then Canaan was his child. And then the curse from Noah on Canaan would continue the bloodline, continue in the bloodline. Now,
Okay.
let's see here. The children of Shem, which would include Canaan, were the Cush and the Canaanites, okay, among others. There were a few others there.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they went around and spread, multiplied, however, we find that the Cush had moved into Egypt or Ethiopia in that region. And so being cursed as the slaves to be for the other two brothers, Ham and Mr. J.
Okay.
As history starts to play out, we start to see that come to fruition, manifest. And so that's what I know. Does that work for you?
Well, I come to class this evening and I'm soaking it up, sir. So you're saying now that this is where this is where the Canaanites came from now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, and what's important there, as this whole thing starts to play out, I guess as a side benefit, is to get an understanding of Christ's ethnicity.
Mm-hmm.
Because the bloodline continued. And as we start to see here in America, we are inundated with the media, and we learn what we hear. If we don't have the opportunity to go and find out specifically the truth, we only get the truth as it's been filtered by our media here. And the media being not just one avenue, but being something of an industry, being in the same mindset. And we can follow that thinking through all of the different eras here in the U.S. And probably around the world when the media became important to civilization as to, well, what's going on? How am I going to find out unless somebody tells me? That whole mentality. Mm-hmm. And so for many years, I've struggled with this one point that let's see how it went. When Christ was born and his father was told to take the child from where he was, Bethlehem, mm-hmm. into Egypt, because the king, who was that, Herod?
Yes. Herod.
Was killing all the children 2 years and younger. And so it will be interesting to see how a family of, let's just say, 3 people, Father, Joseph, Mary, and the baby Christ, to go into another country where most of the people don't look like them. You know what I mean? How do you hide in plain sight when you stand out like a light bulb on in a dark room? You see? And so he wasn't there for a short time. I think he probably was there until he became a teenager. Because when they came back, I think the first thing they did, or at some point early on when they got back to Israel, there was a festival. Was it a feast? I can't think of the name of it offhand.
It was one of those feasts, yes.
Yeah. And That's when he turned, oh no, it was at the wedding, he turned the water into wine. And then the family left after the event, but he stayed behind teaching in the synagogue or in the temple, put it that way. Right. So he had to be of some age. That's my point. He had to be of some age. He wasn't a toddler, put it that way. He was capable of speaking on his own. So now you just came out of Egypt, where the people are of darker skin,
Mm-hmm.
and no one picked up on the fact that you were who you were. So you must have blended in. Okay. And then you came back to here we are back in Israel.
Wow.
And the story goes on from there. So that never really sat right with me as far as when I look in most posters or graphics or whatever, or pictures of Jesus, it's some long-haired white guy.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, we could debate that, and I don't have a problem with it because at the end of the day, God is who he is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, our skin color may just be the result of wherever we were born because of the climate. You know, it's hot here and the skin just got darker, or you're from Europe or from Russia or whatever, and it's cold there and you just had white skin. I don't know. We go through all those kind of conversations. But I get the impression and I walk away with it. And now looking at the bloodline and Noah and his 3 sons, and then all of his children, all of Shem's children migrating to Egypt and Ethiopia,
Mm-hmm.
which is Africa. So,
I think there's some place in some place in the Bible there to say we should avoid speaking about genealogies because it's a very controversial topic right here.
well, yeah, it's controversial depending on what school of thought you're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
If you're coming from a mind made up that Jesus has got to be my guy.
All right now.
But the point is he came to save man.
Yes.
There wasn't a white man, wasn't a red man, wasn't a yellow man or whatever. He came to save man. And then as you follow the bloodline, there are some interesting other things that have come up along that whole journey to the actual birth of Christ. And I don't want to start letting the cat out of the bag because we're going to have a nice discussion, hopefully the next week, about Solomon. Because there's 2 different schools of thought there between Matthew and Luke, their dissertation on the bloodline.
Okay.
All right, because they both end up in 2 different places. One ends up with Joseph and being a direct descendant, and then the other one talks about Mary being a direct descendant. Now, there's nothing wrong with both of them being direct descendants because we started out again with Noah and just 3 families.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So yeah, it all comes together there. But it's interesting how Luke came to his understanding and Matthew came to his. So like I said, I don't want to let the cat out of the bag, but people, we kind of gloss over things that may seem to be not that important, but when you look back at them to get a full understanding of how important this was, this whole bloodline thing, to have rolled out and he didn't have to put this in the Bible. He could have just said, well, we start out with Adam and then we got to David. I mean, we got to Noah, we got to David, and then they got to Joseph and it's done. But to name each along the way,
Yes.
and some of them have a particular story. And then the other piece of it, which is never really looked at, is that as we go through life, and right now, as we go through life, we have a father, a mother. Sometimes the father has two women, two different mothers, okay,
Mm-hmm.
two different fathers or whatever. Some be married, some aren't married. And so when you look back from a Hebrew or Jewish standpoint, the legality is just as important as the physical, meaning that, and that really takes us back to the Bible where God is saying, those of you who weren't Jews, I've adopted you into the family. So you have just as much right
Yes.
as anyone else,
Okay.
whether you were a direct descendant or not. But we're all direct descendants. Because like I
Mm-hmm.
said, you stopped at Noah and he wiped everybody out other than him and his family. That's where we're all coming from. So we're all related.
Yes, sir.
Right. So yeah, I've been struggling with this topic for a couple of weeks now. And I'm just trying to put it together and get comfortable with it,
Mm.
because there's a lot there.
When you look at from the birth of Christ coming up to is teenage years, even up to his crucifixion, and the way you see he was treated by men. Right there, I'm getting signal that his skin color
Mm-hmm.
wasn't something readily accepted. If you notice when his mother was pregnant and they went to the inn, and they actually end up in the stable
Uh-huh. Yeah.
because they said there was no room in the inn for him. So
Right.
it's like he was shut out there even before. This is before birth.
Mm-hmm.
He was shut out, and the Bible even said after his birth, now he was laid in a manger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, the reason for that was simply because of his skin color, why they treated his parents like that.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly believe that. And leading up to his crucifixion now, the Bible said it was it Simon
Simon.
that helped him carry the
The
cross?
cross. Mm-hmm.
Simon of Cyrene, right?
Mm-hmm.
Simon of Cyrene. So that sort of paint a picture to me that his skin color was not like those that are the majority of those that was
Mm-hmm.
around him at that time.
Well, it tells us in Revelations that when John saw him, his skin was of bronze and his hair was white. And so, was it his feet? I think it was his feet he said he saw. And so that's about the only direct reference to the physique of Christ
Mm-hmm.
in the Bible. Everything, and again, we got to realize that I use the King James version, and that's exactly what it is. It's a version of the Bible.
Yes.
I have not seen the original Bible. Okay. And no, I know that King James had some things in there and some things took out. Okay. And then when you go to the Catholic Church, not everything that was in the Bible originally is in their Bible.
Yeah,
Okay.
because there are books there, they have the Apocrypha.
Yeah.
I think that they have it there, and it's not in the King James. It's not in the King James version.
Right. So someone
But
made
Sir Larry, as the word said, if any man had to this, and he's speaking about the Bible. He said, if any man had, or if any man delete from it, he said the plagues that are written in it, it will be worse for those persons who remove anything or add anything, because we can only go by, as you were saying earlier on, about what we get from the media.
Mm-hmm.
So we are just going by what the King James, because that's my choice. That version is my
Mm-hmm.
choice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can only go by what is written there.
Well, we go by what's written there because God had planned it that way. He had the Bible created for that reason, that we would have a reference that we could understand. We don't really know all about God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So when we do focus in on the Bible and what it's saying there, he will reveal to us those things that he wants us to know. But we have to study. We have to look. We have to show ourselves that we are interested. And he will reveal it as he sees fit. But we do have the source to start from.
Yes.
We have a point where we can start from. And that's where our faith starts to build, because we hear the stories, and as we read, we're hearing what God would have to say to us, even if there was one of the stories that is not included in the Bible is the book of Tobias. And that's a story about an angel. And so when you look at, let's just say, the King James Version of the Bible, not a lot of discussion about angels. You can't get around Gabriel, okay? You can't get around him, and you can't get around Raphael.
Mm-hmm.
But anybody else or any other references to angels is very, very limited. I mean, you really have to be on your P's and Q's to pick up on that. But that book, the book of Tobias, is specifically about an angel and what God had him to do in that particular situation. And there's others. I haven't read all of them. I'm, hoping I'll get around to reading them. You can't preach this stuff, but you have to. You want to know. You want to know. I just want to know.
But even as you say, you want to know, I clearly understand that. But if it's not recorded in the 66 books, I'm like, why would it be omitted from the Bible? Why would they take it out?
Well, until you read them, you don't know why they would take it out. And you would not have any idea of why they took it out unless someone actually told you. Now, we know God created angels before he created man. Why isn't there more insight into people die every day? Oh, they were such a good person. I know they're going to be one of God's angels. No, that's not how it works. You weren't created to be an angel. You're created to be a man. All right. So different, totally different. All right. But you can't get that full understanding locked into the King James Version. You have to get that from other places. And then, even then, you don't have the full and detailed story, but you have an idea. Yeah, well, God is not just only focused on man. He's got other things going on.
Well, maybe the reason why more about angel is not listed like in the King James version is simply because this is my thought now.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because you'd have people be focusing more on angels more than on the creator of the angels. Because
Okay.
man tend to even in this dispensation, man are more concerned about the creation more than the creator.
Mm.
That is common. That's a common thing
Oh, yeah.
about mankind. So if more was recorded about angels, we know that because the Bible clearly tells us that angels are far superior to human beings.
Mm-hmm.
But in the scripture itself, also it said that we will be judging angels.
I
So
didn't hear
it's like, okay,
that.
okay.
Well, one of the other reasons that we need to understand more about angels, and I'm not trying to push anything on anybody. I'm just talking. The adversary has his angels. They call them demons.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And they have a role. Just as there's a hierarchy in the angels, there's a hierarchy in the enemy's demons. And so we might just, you go your whole life and you never even think about something like that happening, being possessed or a demon coming upon someone or whatever. These things happen,
Yes.
and
We
they
read
aren't
about it. Yes.
explainable because they're not explainable because a lot of people don't know much about it, or they don't even want to know about it. They just, hey, whatever is whatever. You do what you do. But listen, sometimes you got to recognize what you're looking at. You got to,
Yes.
you be able to discern the good, the right from the wrong, the truth from the lie.
Mm-hmm.
Discern who was talking to you and who's not talking to you. Okay? And so the more you know, the easier it is to discern because they do what they do the same way all the time. And one reason why they can be successful is because we keep doing the same thing we do over and over again. So the demon, I know what Larry's gonna do. As soon as I do this, he's gonna do that. Okay, so now I got to trick him. But the more you know, the less opportunity for you to fall for something that you already been through. I'm not going to do that again because I know that that's a problem or somebody went through this before. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to follow in their footsteps.
Wow.
So anyway, I think we had 40 minutes on this topic. Next week, we want to talk about part 2, which is from Noah to Solomon, which is going to be interesting.
Well, I'll come in again. Time permit me. I'll come in and glean from, I'll glean. I know I learned something. So I'll just come in and I'll be here if all being well, sir.
Okay. Let me just close out. I'll be right back with you.
Okay.
4% of readers say the way station changed their perspective on life and death. Let's dive into the mystery. 7 strangers, 7 stories, 1 elevator ride. In the way station, each passenger is unaware of the extraordinary journey they're about to embark on. What if the afterlife isn't the end, but merely a transition? Or perhaps a second chance to rewrite your story? This book brings you to the moment right before their souls transition, either to the hereafter or to a second shot at life. Imagine stepping into an elevator, expecting a reward for a good deed, but instead, you face your destiny. Each character unknowingly inches closer to either redemption or reiteration, with one unified question in mind: what lesson must I learn? Explore this philosophical and thrilling narrative that challenges the boundaries of life and death. Ready to uncover your next destiny? The Way Station is available on Amazon. Order your copy today and journey beyond the ordinary.
Thanks be to God. You have been listening to another episode of the Walking by Faith podcast hosted by Minister Larry Montgomery, Sr. and friends. Join us again next time as we continue to labor in this vineyard with an eye towards bringing the words of God to those who are interested. Remember, the sole purpose of this podcast is to present candid discussions about various words that are found in the Bible with an eye towards defining in the context of these troubled times along with clarity, insight, commentary and hopefully some revelation to interested listeners. This podcast is a presentation of the Montgomery Media Group.tv and can be found on most podcast platforms. Video presentations are available on YouTube, the African American Shopping Network channel. This show is sponsored by www.theauthor's Corner online. Please like us and follow us on Facebook. May God continue to bless you and yours until next time. God bless.